need an introduction, but I'm going to try my best to introduce him to you. And I'm going to do it by way of my first meeting with Eric. You know, I was new to, as most of you guys know, I was new to Nevada market 2.5 years ago, and I got involved with AIA, went to the AIA product show, and they had their version of speed dating at the luncheon, and I got the opportunity to meet Eric there. And he was wearing a bow tie and looked like he looked like he was completely somebody that you think was not going to be running a company, but entirely ran a company. And I was like, this guy is brilliant. And I remember talking to my boss who was with me. I said, that was probably one of the funniest yet more educational 3 minutes I've ever had in my life. And then I ended with Eric saying, hey, do you mind if I just contact you again? And sure enough, he was great, gracious with that offer. I contacted him again and set up a meeting. Long story short, I've even been able to provide some services for him, for his company. And I've been following him ever since and got to know a lot of the other individuals within his company. A very dynamic company, very inspirational company, very much dedicated to the growth of not only the economy in Las Vegas, but even more importantly, the culture, the fabric of who we are in Las Vegas. And so I appreciate every opportunity I get to speak with him. And today he has graciously given up some of his time to share with all of you some of his thoughts about 2021 and moving forward. But even more important maybe than that, he's opened it up for all of us to ask questions of him. So with that, welcome everybody. Eric, great to have you on board. Thank you, sir. The beard looks great. We'll start with that.
Well, thank you. This is probably, I'm hoping, as scarred as I get from the pandemic, is that the beard has changed my look. I've been lucky enough to not be affected physically in any other way, but I appreciate everybody registering and coming. It's always fantastic to see so many of your faces, and for me as an architect, I'm a strong supporter of the AIA, and I know that our allies make the AIA great, and so when it comes to work and it comes to looking for consultants, I always look to my allies first, and all other things being equal, that's a big deal to me, to see you at meetings and to know that those relationships exist. So thank you for your support of the AIA and for being here this morning. Yeah, I don't have a presentation, but you know, I want to talk with each of you. This is an opportunity, I think, something that I've seen in the last year is the ability to connect over Zoom. 365 days ago, if you had told me that I would be having more meetings with people in a digital sense and still getting some fulfillment out of it, I'd have said you were crazy. If you'd have told me that my whole office would work from home and that we would be effective, getting work accomplished, servicing clients, I'd have told you you were crazy. But these things are our reality today. And I think that's something to be said, and for the creativity of the industry, for the can-do attitude of the people that work in architecture and design. And I see that existing even in some sense into the future, even as we are allowed to come back to work. I think the flexibility to work wherever you are, wherever you need to be, is something our company started working on back in 2015. And so the conversion was somewhat easier for us when it was required to be able to work wherever you were and whenever you were. So that's been a great thing to me. One thing that Lee and I talked about that I might want to just give some information in case the question comes up. How do you get in contact with folks from NIT? We're at home, and so we don't have the lunch and learns that we used to have. You can't drop by the office and see us, but we are still available. We are still here. Though we're not at the office, I look forward to contacts from vendors that have new products. I love those that are creative and find ways to get information to us. I think one thing that's important now, maybe more so than it used to be, we used to look for hours, right? We would block our days into hours, give me an hour of your time and I'll come by, we'll have a meeting and we'll sit down. I think that's changed today because we can load up our days so much that it becomes a little bit overwhelming to think that you're going to stack 9 or 10 one-hour meetings in a row, because we don't have to travel anymore, and still be effective. So I really like the small bite philosophy. I've got 2 or 3 points that I want to talk to you about, and can you give me 15 or 20 minutes? Because we can remain on point and focused, and that allows me to have more meetings that are effective throughout my day. A 1 hour meeting is often difficult to have 1 hour worth of content. I know that our lunch and learns sometimes need to be that long, and thank you to many of you that helped me with my CEU credits at the end of the year with your lunch and learns. But that's one strategy that I might recommend, is the 20-minute meeting. Look for brief meetings that are rich in content and rich in a direction and a point. And I think we can be a lot more effective in that, and people become a lot more free with their time. Because time management is one thing I'm sure that each of you have found. We work at home. I don't know what your ritual is. I still go to work. I get in the car, I drive, I get a coffee, I come back, I'm at work. Sure, I walked right by my office on the way to get coffee, but that's how I have to break my day. And then when I finish the day, I go and get my workout, and then I change and I'm home. So I have to have rituals for my time management. I don't know how each of you have done that. Hopefully you're not working until 11 o'clock at night, just because you're at home and just because you can, and getting some balance in your life. But I want to hear from you guys and hear what you're interested in talking about. I don't know how you handle questions, Lee. How do we do on this? You could raise hands, but I don't know if we can see you.
Yeah, no, everyone who's chosen to turn on their video certainly has their video. Everyone is able to unmute and mute themselves. And you know, with this group, we haven't been shy in people speaking up. So I encourage anybody who has a question to go ahead and shoot it at Eric now. Maybe a bad choice of words. Sorry. Present it to Eric right now. So we'll open it up to the group.
I'll start. Hi, Eric. This is Lori Lee. I do business development for Innova Technologies, structural engineers.
Yeah.
And can you share with us what you're seeing in the market and in the industry right now from NIT's perspective, and what kind of projects are you guys currently working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that one. That was one thing that Lee and I also talked about. You know, when the pandemic first happened, we were in the middle of kind of the front end of the wave of a number of longer projects. So the impact to us last year was really not severe. There was work there. The projects didn't stop. They were going to continue to move forward. As the fourth quarter came and we started looking at the first quarter, that's when finding the new work became a little bit more difficult. And it's not that it's not there. I think it's looking in different places. Obviously, commercial and retail markets are I think going to be slow. But I think at some point this year, we're going to start seeing people, as they start coming back to work, rethinking their spaces. So I'm anticipating some of that commercial office work to come back in small portions. But we've really just adapted. There's a lot of multifamily work right now. We've got offices in Salt Lake, Seattle, and Las Vegas, and we've got multifamily work in each of those. There's federal government work is still happening. And from conversations that I've had with the state of Nevada, I expect to see some of that work this summer and into this fall be issued that should impact people north and south in the state of Nevada. So local government, I'm not so sure. I know the city of Las Vegas has kind of waffled a little bit on what they're going to do and if they're going to do any projects. Some have stopped, some haven't. But really for us, multifamily, government work, state side and federal side, and then I expect once the school district stops trying to fire the superintendent, there's going to be still some work with the school district that happens. There's still retrofits. There's some major retrofits that they need to do there. I know there's a TSK, I think, is doing a high school. So there's some work there for Clark County School District as well that we'll also be a part of.
Awesome. Just for your information, I heard from Lucy Davis that they will be releasing or advertising their SOQs after this Friday. So that's coming up.
Yeah, perfect. I would say probably not a lot on the large side coming from them, but yeah, a lot of work for a lot of people still left on that bond.
Thanks, Lorelei. Any other questions? I heard somebody chime in. Okay, I have a question while you guys are thinking of some. So Eric, you and I had the chance to speak previously, and one of the things that I think was really fascinating about, and I shared a little bit of this in my opening of you know, my dealings with you, is that NIT as a whole, and specifically you, really have a desire to help. And I don't want to use the word less fortunate or less needy in the community, but certainly, you know, it's pointing towards that direction. There's a lot of need in our community. Whether it's children or homelessness or whatnot. I have been fascinated with what you guys have done with Boys and Girls Club, for example, and just your connections on bringing a stronger, and I talk about this word fabric, but bringing a stronger fabric to the presence of AIA within our Las Vegas, you know, geographic footprint. And so maybe if you could speak a little bit to why that's important to NIT, maybe provide some inspiration on what we could be doing to support some of those initiatives, because it really is gonna, it's gonna take all of us to make Las Vegas better than what it was pre-pandemic. So maybe from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I got a lot of questions last year. We changed our name about 1.5 years ago, and people ask, well, you know, what is NIT? Why NIT? And some of that community outreach goes to how we ended up with that name. Our thought was, you know, as architects, you take threads of all sorts of different stories of the owner, the community that it's in, some of the code, and we weave all this together to really create the fabric of society, to weave that together, or to knit people's stories into a new reality, new communities. And one of the biggest things that we support and believe in is community outreach. So we always have a number of projects that are community minded. Boys and Girls Club has been one that we've been committed to in Southern Nevada. And now we are on our 3rd Boys and Girls Club in the Truckee Meadows Boys and Girls Club area. And one thing I know, because we still go and visit the clubs and help some of you allies I've contacted to try to help make donations for things that they need. There's kids that still require a place to go. Just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean that suddenly there's a 2-parent home and a place for a child to be all day long. That's been the difficulty really for a lot of families as this pandemic has happened. And our societal community organizations become that much more critical because something needs to be done to help them. So we have stayed committed to making sure that these Boys and Girls Clubs are operating. I know Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada have really tried to adapt what they're doing to allow kids space to study, kids that might not have computers or computer connections. They've really become education focused there, seeing that need. There's a number of other organizations that we're involved with as well. The Friends of Nevada Wilderness. We support a film festival every year here in Las Vegas for the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Because as much as we love the built environment, in Southern Nevada, we love wild and open spaces, and we believe in maintaining those spots that we love to run to on the weekend, trail running or on our mountain bikes or just out in our Jeeps, 4-wheeling or camping. That's Nevada, and we think we need to protect that as much as we need to celebrate the built environment. And I know each of you probably have things that you're interested in supporting. Some of you are very, very generous in your support. But if you're not, maybe take 2021 as an opportunity to look around and lift where you can. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, it doesn't take a 30-hour commitment every week to make an incredible difference in your community. But with the bright, intelligent people that are associated with the AIA and on this call, a huge difference can be made for the future of Las Vegas and Southern Nevada by a very small donation on each of our parts. Time or treasure, you pick. Is really critical.
Eric, maybe a follow-up question does anybody have a question? Looking around, comments, question. Maybe a follow-up question to that, Eric, is that, you talk about every little bit matters, and as a great segue into kind of what's important for this group, right, is how any insight from your perspective, and of course nobody's going to hold you to this, but what does the future of Las Vegas look like from a development standpoint, from a design standpoint, right? We're kind of in this ebb and flow of so many things in flux that even from an allied membership standpoint, how do we talk to the knit studios of the world to say, hey, we understand what you're going through, and maybe even the design community in and itself doesn't understand what some of those changes are. Any thoughts to that?
Yeah, I think, there's obviously going to be impacts from the pandemic on design, but I think where we ended up with design January of 2020 was built over centuries of human evolution. And I don't think our need to gather together publicly is going to go away. I think when it's safe, people are going to want to come to Las Vegas to celebrate that side of what drives this economy. But I think Las Vegas, those that have been here for any length of time, has really matured over the last 20, 25 years architecturally. And we are starting to see a demand for work that is not just cheap and fast. People want architecture that improves community, architecture that makes a statement, architecture that enriches lives. And I think that is going to continue as a trend, especially as our community continues to grow and as we need to become more focused on growing in ways that are sustainable and smart. The things that troubled us before, water issues, community issues with growth leaving some neighborhoods behind, are going to continue to be there and going to require our work continuously reinventing ourselves. That's the beauty of Las Vegas. If you want to see America, as Roman Mars said, you come to Las Vegas, because if it can be tried, it will be tried here and perfected here before the rest of the world gets to see it in their backyard. That's not going to stop here. We're in a bit of a lull right now economically, but I would expect when there is some ability to get out some level of immunity or vaccine, I'm hoping by summer, I think people have dollars to spend, and we're going to get back to that development cycle here in Southern Nevada. People love our economic opportunities. They love the no income tax. They're going to continue coming here, especially from our west. And that's going to drive a lot of growth, starting with housing and all the way up to state government, buildings, fire stations, libraries, museums. Hopefully in the next couple of years, we get the art museum done downtown. That's kind of my last key to having the complete city, right? We've got theater, now we need to get that big museum in town. But I think the future is bright. I know it feels like we're holding our breath, but I am not a downer at all about even 2021. Yeah. There's light at the end of this tunnel.
Yep, and it's getting closer, my friend. It's getting closer. There's a couple of questions that come in. One from Nate. Nate is thanks for the insight, Eric. One question with a little time to prep. What are you most excited about or looking forward to in 2021?
2021, I'm looking forward to discovering how our company evolves. Meaning I've kind of seen what we can do with completely retracting back to home, but I'm excited to see how this reemerges with a hybrid model of being at home and at the office. And I sense that we will see probably more architecture offices that have more flexible space. And how do we use some of the large space that we have, maybe in a way that's more dynamic? Might we, lease out portions of our offices to others in an entrepreneurial fashion because we don't need the full space anymore. We can be more dynamic with the office spaces we have. I think that's a great way for incubating new companies, new service lines for architects and creatives. And I'm really looking forward to how that emerges throughout the year. I've kind of got my eye on that in 2021.
Nice. Well, everybody loves you. Lexi says, "Hey, Eric, it's great to see you with your great hair. What factor nationally beyond the pandemic do you see and recognize affecting the A&E profession?"
We are still, I think, in a position from the recession where we are lacking talent. Mm-hmm. I think there is a gap there, and I was banging this drum with the AIA in 15, 16, 17, and I will continue to do so. If you've got kids that are looking for a profession that is going to have work into their future, get them into the design profession, because there was 10 years when architecture was not a good bet, and kids stopped going to architecture schools. But you couple that with the baby boomers retiring, they might have delayed that a little bit with the way stock market has gone, but there is going to be a gap. The numbers we were talking in 16 and 17 is 27,000 architects nationwide, a shortage that we would need. And I found that as we opened positions, we were lucky to pick up a couple who were laid off last year from other firms, and we got some talent, but we can't keep fighting each other for the talent that we need to do the great work that we need to do. So at some point, that's a zero-sum game, and we need to get new talent in order to continue to grow. And the opportunity to grow will be there. And I don't want firms coming from outside of our state to do the work that we need to do because we can't get the talent here that we need. So that's, I think that's an impact nationally, but it's also a great impact locally for each of us. We want to keep those dollars here.
That's such great insight. And to your point, Eric, it's not even design industry related, right? When you're talking about that talent, retaining and attracting talent. I mean, you look at your brothers and sisters in the construction side of the equation, they're struggling as well. They're having more people exit than they do filling on the front end, whether it's retirement or medical related. And so our industry as a whole, the AEC and the owner industry, really needs to figure out, for lack of a better phrase, how do they engage with the younger generations to say, this is a great profession, this is a great industry, be part of creating what eventually will be a legacy, right? I just think that's fascinating. I have a passion for that as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a great opportunity because as any of you can tell, go to an AIA meeting and you'll see this. For a long time, whether it was purposeful or not, architecture was promoted as a middle class to upper class white man's profession. Mm-hmm. And there is a huge opportunity to reach out to people of color, to reach out especially to young women who are minorities. I know when we go and do outreach programs for our elementary schools, I've asked this question, you know, how many of you want to be an architect or a landscape architect? And I'll see hands go up, and I'll say, all right, boys, put your hands down. So out of you girls, how many of you think you can actually become an architect or a landscape architect or an engineer? Over half the hands go down. Somehow they've got the message that I can't do this, that this is something that's not available to me. That's a lie. Not only is that a lie, that's incredibly detrimental to our profession's future. So if we can reach out to those portions of our community in construction, in design, not only does our design become enriched and evolved, but we become more solid as a community. And I think if we can solve that puzzle, we will be so much farther ahead in this next generation than the design community we were given when we started our careers.
You're preaching to the choir as I'm watching all the hey-heys coming in on the side comment for the chat. So good on you, sir. Good on you. We're getting ready to wrap. Let me open this up. Does anybody have a final question or a final comment for Eric? Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Eric. Boy, I miss your bow tie.
I'm sorry. You know,
I told you.
I have to take the shirt off, and that's a whole different costume.
Yeah, no.
You got to pay to get into that show.
Hey, but I do love your bow ties. But what I also really like about KNIT and with your leadership is how you guys immerse yourselves into the projects in the communities and those projects you're on. It seems like a lot of the projects you're on, it's really all about community and all about understanding from the inside out. And so I commend you for that. And I think your KNIT change in name, you know, last year, I think it fits you guys, really knitting yourself into that community. So I commend you guys about that. And you don't have to comment on this, but I just enjoy seeing you guys get involved in the community.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
Excellent. I have one final question for you, Eric, on I believe would benefit all of us on here as mostly allied members. I do see some other architects on here, but mostly allied members. You know, our job as allied members is really to support the design community in one shape, form, or fashion, right? And to support it in a way that is progressive in moving the spectrum along in a positive, influenced way. And so my question for you is, if there was one thing you could tell this group, that this is what keeps Eric up at night at KNIT Studios, and if you could help me solve this problem, and it may speak to some of us and it may not, what would that one challenge be?
Boy, there's a lot of things that keep me up at night anymore, but probably one forefront of my mind is still related to that rising generation, but it's the rising generation in our office. This is one gap that I've found from the digital communication. When I was coming up as a drafter, there was a gray-haired guy that sat next to me, Richard Gagliano. Those of you that have been in town a while might know Richard. And I came and I was detailing the CCRF project, the car rental facility down at McCarran. It was one of the first things I did when I came to town. And I drew details all day for months, steel details. And there was a back and forth throughout the day between he and I, where I would draft for a while and then I would have questions and he would redline and I would develop these details into what they needed to be. And the learning that happened there, I don't think we can have that same level of communication digitally as quickly. It takes much more time. And I think you can take this to also being the products that many of you present. It's hard to educate some technical things, and we still haven't bridged that gap. And I'm looking for ways to do that more effectively, because I know we need to pass along so much information. Architecture is not something you do successfully just because you have a master's degree. It's not something you do successful just because you have a master's degree and 10 years experience. My gosh, architecture takes time to understand the technicalities of what we do. So that ability to educate and to do it in a way that is one that sticks, but also attracts you to the education. We were kind of forced into it when we sat next to each other, right? Someone was looking over your shoulder. They were going to ask you a question. You had to respond. But I don't want to look at a slideshow about steel details. And I'm sure you guys feel this when you present a material and you're saying, these architects don't care. They're not paying attention to this. I'm 7 slides into my presentation about something that's critically important to my business, and they're probably looking at their email, or they're probably working on some other thing they have to work on. So finding ways to get people engaged to learn, that keeps me up at night. That I think needs to be bridged going into the future, because people will work from anywhere. We can't be assured that we will be allowed to work together, but that doesn't mean we will be together all the time. And so I don't have a solution for that one, but I think it's critical for the future.
I think it's a really, really great answer, because if you think about it, the one thing that I've learned about these Zoom videos is you're right. We can compress an hour meeting into a 15 to 20 minute time component, but what we can't see is the missing body language. We can't see what else is going on around the room, right? Where if we're presenting to the team of people, you can kind of see everybody and what's the body language and what's the interaction, to use your words, what's that engagement. And so setting the stage early on to be able to do that, I think that to me, that speaks to me, but I think it supports all of us on this call that, hey, we all are in the business of providing services and solutions to somebody. You're going to have to figure out how to keep them engaged in a little tiny thumbnail picture on your computer, because that's just the way we do business right now.
Right.
Eric, I want to thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on board. As always, I didn't think that this 30 minutes was going to be enough time for us. I figured with your expertise, we probably needed 30 days, but we only got 30 minutes. So we appreciate that. And thank you for that. But before I let everyone go, for those who don't know, and most everybody does know, Randy is here. I see her on the screen over there. And you know, she's retiring, you guys. And we may not always have her little tiny thumbnail picture in our Zoom calls on Coffee with an Architect, although I'm trying very, very hard to have her come onto this committee. But I do want to thank you, Randy, for everything that you've done personally for me, everything you've done for all of these allied members here, and wish you continued happiness, continued success, and whatever the next chapter of your journey is. With that, I wanted to let you know that we also have on our call, at least I believe they're still on, is 2 of the next speakers. So coming up next, he's not on the call, but Ed Vance will join us on next month. But Mr. Jim Lord has joined us today, and he's going to be our guest architect in March, and Monica is going to be our guest speaker in April. So we've got a good lineup. I'll close with this: if there's a specific architect that you'd like me to touch base with, because you'd like to have this same type of engagement with them, please reach out to me or reach out to AIA and they can get a hold of me. Additionally, if there is a panel discussion, much like what we did last year, and I thank Kelly and Randy for helping me work with Kaylee on this with TSK and SR Construction, we'd love to do something like that again as well. So reach out to us as well. With that, have a great Wednesday. Eric, thank you very, very much. Randy, enjoy your retirement, and everybody have a great Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Lee. I appreciate the recognition.